The child's scream cuts through the October cold like a blade wrapped in ice. Emma runs barefoot across cracked pavement, her torn pink jacket flapping open, one button missing, lost somewhere behind her on the asphalt. 5 years old. Small for her age. Her breath visible in short, panic bursts as she screams the only name she has ever trusted. Nora. Please, Nora. The girl's feet are bleeding. She doesn't feel it yet. Inside the underground poker room, cigar smoke hangs so thick it looks solid. Nicholas Castellano sits at the green felt table, his back perfectly straight, his expensive suit jacket unbuttoned to reveal a white shirt open at the collar. 48 years old. 6'2". Dark hair silvered at the temples. A scar runs from his left eye to his cheekbone, thin and precise like someone once tried to split his face in half. He has $340,000 stacked in front of him in neat piles. 5 armed guards stand at fixed positions around the room. Vinny and Enzo flank his chair, solid as monuments, watching the other players with the empty stare of men who have seen things that cannot be unseen. The scream comes again. The door explodes inward. Not crashes. Explodes. Nora Voss stumbles through, and the room goes absolutely still. She is 28 years old but looks 40. Her dark hair is matted with blood. Her left eye is swollen completely shut, purple-black, a bruise that looks like a second face forming underneath her skin. Her right eye, the only one that works, is red from crying or fear or both. Blood drips from her split lip. Her throat is wrapped in bruises shaped like hands. Fingers. Thumbs. The outline of someone who tried to squeeze the life out of her and almost succeeded. She is wearing a waitress uniform, the apron still tied around her waist, stained with coffee and something darker. Her shoes are missing. Her feet are cut from the asphalt she ran through, leaving small red marks on the carpet as she moves. She doesn't notice any of this. She only moves. Her legs give out at the edge of the table. She catches herself on the green felt, leaving a small red handprint near Nicholas's chips. Please, she whispers through cracked lips. Her voice sounds like glass breaking. Shelter. We need shelter. Please. We need shelter. The men don't move. No one in this room has ever heard a woman beg. Emma bursts through the door behind her. The girl is screaming so hard she cannot breathe properly. Her small body crashes into Nora's legs, and Nora, despite every part of her being broken, wraps herself around the child like a shield. Emma's hands grip the torn fabric of Nora's uniform. The girl is shaking so hard her teeth chatter. Through the small reinforced window in the door, Nicholas sees them appear. 50 men. Maybe more. They materialize from the darkness of the alleyway outside like they have been waiting there all along, which they have. They move in perfect formation, spreading across every exit, every corner, every possible escape route with the precision of military soldiers. Black clothing. No insignia. No identification. No mercy. They do not run. They do not hurry. They simply move into position and then they wait, surrounding the building like the lid of a coffin closing. Nicholas Castellano recognizes this formation. He learned it 23 years ago, when he was 18 and his older brother, Marco, sold the family to their enemies in a warehouse outside of Reno. 17 people died that night. Nicholas survived because he was in the basement, counting money. He has never forgotten that formation. The way they move. The way they surround. The way they make sure no one gets out. He looks at Vinny. Vinny's hand moves toward his chest, where his gun sits. Nicholas raises one finger. Stop. He stands slowly. His movements are deliberate, controlled, each motion showing absolute power. He walks around the table toward the woman and the child. The other players don't breathe. The guards don't move. Only Nicholas walks, his footsteps soundless on the carpet. Nora's one good eye snaps toward him, and he sees her body prepare to run. There is nowhere to run. She knows this. What is your name? His voice is deep and solid like an oath. Nora, she whispers. My name is Nora Voss. And the child? Emma. She is 5. Please, I don't have much money. I don't have anything. I have $5. That is all I have in the world. But she is a good child. She is kind. Please, I just need somewhere safe. Just for tonight. Just somewhere he cannot find us. Nicholas looks at the small girl in the torn pink jacket. Emma looks back at him with eyes that should not exist on a 5-year-old's face. Eyes that have seen things. Eyes that know fear in the way only a hunted animal knows it. He thinks of his own childhood. The warehouse. The sound of gunfire. The way his mother screamed his name and he could not reach her. He thinks of his brother, Marco, who wanted money so badly he sold his own family's blood to enemies. What is his name? Nicholas asks. Douglas, Nora says. Douglas Hale. He won't stop. He follows us everywhere. The police know what he has done. He tried to kill me. He left marks on my neck. But the police won't help. They won't help because he has money and friends in the right places. And I have nothing. I have nothing. And now he has blocked every way out and I don't know how to protect her and I am so tired of being afraid. Her voice breaks on the last word. Breaks like ice under weight. Enzo moves slightly forward and Nicholas sees his lieutenant's jaw clench. In 15 years, Enzo has worked for Nicholas Castellano. He has seen him make decisions that destroyed lives. He has seen him show mercy exactly once, to a man who reminded him of his own father. He has never seen him look at a stranger like he is looking at Nora now. Nicholas turns to face the window where the 50 men wait in the darkness. Outside, the wind blows through the alley, carrying the smell of rain and asphalt and the metallic scent of violence about to happen. How long has he hunted you? Nicholas asks. 3 months, Nora says. Since I left him. He told me if I left, he would destroy me. He said no one would ever hire me again. He said no one would believe me. He was right. Every job I got, somehow it ended. Every shelter I tried to reach, my name was already marked as dangerous, unstable, unreliable. Someone whispered my reputation into ruin. I do not know who. But it worked. Now I have $5 and nowhere to go and he is outside right now and I cannot protect her and I don't know what to do. Emma presses her face against Nora's leg. The child's small voice emerges, barely audible. Vivi says no one else ever helps. Everyone leaves. Nicholas looks at the 5-year-old. The girl calls Nora by a nickname. This woman has been caring for this child while being hunted, while being homeless, while having $5 to her name. He turns to Vinny. How many men can we have armed in 3 minutes? 30, Vinny says immediately. 40 if we push it. Push it. Vinny and Enzo move silently toward the door at the back of the poker room. The guards stand perfectly still, waiting for the next command. Nicholas walks back to the green felt table, to his $340,000 in stacks, and he does something that will echo through the Las Vegas underworld before the night is over. He leaves it all there. He picks up a cashmere coat worth more than Nora Voss has earned in the last 6 months, and he drapes it around her shoulders. The fabric is soft. It smells like expensive cologne and money and safety. My name is Nicholas Castellano, he says quietly. And no one is going to hunt you while you are under my roof. Nora's one good eye widens. She has heard this name. Everyone in Las Vegas has heard this name. The Mafia boss. The man who controls half the city. The man who makes people disappear. I cannot pay you, she whispers. I did not ask you to. He kneels down, meeting Emma's eyes directly. The child stares at him with the wariness of a small animal that has learned not to trust, but something in his scarred face, something in the way he does not look away, makes her breathe a little easier. Would you like to be safe, Emma? he asks. The girl nods very slowly. Then you are going to stay with me. And this man outside, the one who is hunting you, he is going to learn what happens when he hunts something in my territory. Emma reaches out, and her small hand touches the scar on his face. She does not flinch from it. Does it hurt? She asks. Not anymore, Nicholas says. It did for a very long time. But it does not hurt anymore. The sound of engines rumbles outside. Men shouting. The formation of 50 men is breaking apart, surrounded now by 40 armed men in black suits emerging from the underground garage, moving with the same precision, the same deadly purpose. The first gunshot echoes through the October night. But what Nora does not know is that one woman sits 3 miles away in a penthouse office, watching the security feed from her phone, her fingers wrapped around a wine glass filled with red wine the color of blood. Rachel Dawson smiles. She has not finished with Nora Voss yet. Now, let us go back to where this began. To the highway in the dry October wind, where a car ran out of gas and a woman made the decision that would bring her to this room, to this man, to the choice that would change everything. 3 hours earlier. The clock showed 5:51 in the evening. And the rain was just beginning to fall. Before we continue with what happens next, if this story is hitting your heart already, drop a like. Share it with someone who knows what it feels like to be hunted, to be invisible, to have nowhere left to run. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes tomorrow. And please, stay with us through this story. Now, back to 3 hours earlier. The highway stretched empty under a sky the color of concrete. Nora Voss sat motionless in her 1997 Honda Civic as it sputtered, coughed, and died. The engine gave a final metallic wheeze. Silence swallowed everything except the wind, October wind, dry and sharp like a blade wrapped in ice, cutting through the desert that pressed against the asphalt on all sides. She checked the fuel gauge. Empty. She checked her phone. 3% battery. 17 missed calls, all from the same number. Douglas Hale. She did not need to listen to the voicemails to know what they contained. His voice, thick and vicious. His promises. His threats. His swearing that he would find her, that she was his, that no one could take her away from him. The last time she had answered his call, he had put her in St. Mary's Hospital for 3 days. Broken ribs. A fractured collarbone. Bruises that bloomed purple and yellow across her shoulders and back. And when the police came to the hospital, when she begged them, her voice shattered and barely recognizable as her own, when she showed them her body marked with his hands, they had written the report as a domestic dispute, both parties declined to press charges. Both parties. As if she had been given a choice. As if her voice, trembling like a candle in the wind, meant anything at all. Emma sat in the back seat, small and silent, her 7-year-old face pressed against the window. She had not spoken in 3 hours. Not since they left Las Vegas. Not since Nora had pulled her from the shelter at 11 that morning, when the notice came through, court order, final decision, Emma was to be placed in foster care in 72 hours because Nora could not pay the $85,000 bond that Rachel Dawson's private attorneys had somehow convinced the judge to require. 72 hours. 3 days. The clock was already running. Are we going to be okay? Emma asked now, her voice so small it could barely compete with the wind. Nora lied. Always, baby. We are always going to be okay. The child's hand found Nora's in the darkness. Emma's fingers were thin and cold. Nora squeezed gently, careful not to move her ribs too much. The pain lived there constantly now, a companion that never left. She opened her wallet with her free hand. One $5 bill. That was everything. That was the total of her existence in currency form. $5. She had no job, Rachel Dawson had made sure of that, spreading rumors to every restaurant, every hotel, every business in Las Vegas that would hire her. Unemployable. Unreliable. Dangerous. The words had followed her like smoke. In her jacket pocket, Nora kept Emma's first pair of shoes. Tiny pink sneakers with velvet laces, worn thin at the heel from a year of learning to walk. She had saved nothing else when the shelter closed last month, no documents, no photographs, no letters, but the shoes she kept. The shoes proved Emma had existed before this nightmare. The shoes meant something. Headlights appeared in the distance. Then another set. Then another. Not one car. 5 black SUVs, moving in perfect formation down the empty highway like sharks sensing blood in the water. They surrounded her vehicle with precision that made Nora's breath catch. The kind of precision that only came from practice. Doors opened simultaneously. Men emerged. 8 men at first, then more. All wearing black suits that cost more than everything Nora owned. All moving with the same measured, controlled purpose. Each man carried himself like a weapon that had learned to walk upright. Their shoes clicked on the asphalt. The center sub's door opened last. The man who stepped out was tall, 6'2" at minimum, with broad shoulders that seemed to stretch the fabric of his tailored jacket. Dark hair, swept back from a face that could have been carved from stone. He was maybe 45, maybe 50, with lines around his eyes that suggested he had seen terrible things and made terrible decisions. A scar ran from his left eye to his cheekbone, silver in the dying light. He wore a gold watch that caught what remained of the sun. Nora recognized power when she saw it. She had lived in its absence her entire life, which meant she could smell it when it approached. She pulled Emma closer. One of the men, younger, with sharp features and dark eyes that missed nothing, approached the passenger window. His name was Vinny, though Nora did not yet know this. He moved slowly, carefully, as if approaching a wounded animal. He tapped on the glass. Nora did not roll down the window. Vinny waited a moment, then made a motion. The window hummed down. "Your vehicle is disabled." His voice was even, professional, like a funeral director explaining arrangements. "There's a storm coming in from the north. Heavy rain. Flash flood warnings. This road will be impassable in 30 minutes. We can provide transport." Nora saw armed men. Saw expensive watches. Saw the kind of danger that wore tailored suits and spoke with courtesy. But behind Vinny, beyond the formation of black SUVs, she saw something else. Headlights. A truck she recognized. Douglas's truck. Dented fender on the driver's side. That specific shade of primer gray on the hood where the paint had burned away. He had found her again. Her heart stopped. Actually stopped. She felt it, the sharp catch in her chest, the moment of cardiac arrest, as if her body was trying to protect itself by shutting down entirely. The man with the scar, a Nicholas Castellano, though she did not yet know his name either, he was watching her face. He saw the blood drain from it. He saw her pull the child closer, trying to make Emma invisible. He saw the bruises on her wrists, the pattern of fingers pressed into her skin, healing but still visible. He made a decision in that moment. It would change everything. Get them in the vehicle. His voice came like thunder, low and solid and absolute. Now. Enzo, block that truck. Do not let it follow us. The taller man, Enzo, nodded without speaking and moved toward one of the rear SUVs. The formation shifted. 2 vehicles peeled away, moving backward toward the approaching truck with the determination of a closing trap. Vinny opened Nora's door. She did not move at first. She was paralyzed by the mathematics of fear. Which was worse, the men in black suits, or the truck that had learned to hunt her through a city with 14,000 security cameras and not a single cop who cared? "Come, please," Vinny said, his voice gentle now. Almost kind. Nora climbed out of the Civic, keeping Emma's hand locked in hers. Emma was shaking. Whether from cold or terror, Nora could not tell. The child's small suitcase was in the trunk, the only possessions they had left, but there was no time. There would never be time. The convoy moved as one organism. Nora and Emma were placed in the center SUV. Nicholas Castellano sat across from them, separated by a space that felt simultaneously very small and impossibly vast. The vehicle smelled like leather and cologne and something else she could not identify. Money, maybe. Power. Darkness with a price tag. Through the tinted window, Nora watched Douglas's truck try to follow. But Enzo and another man stood in its path, and the message was clear. Not here. Not tonight. Not these two. The truck stopped. The convoy moved forward. They drove through the October evening as the sky turned colors that did not exist in Nora's previous life. Oranges and purples and reds that seemed borrowed from somewhere else. The storm was coming, she could see it on the horizon, a dark mass moving toward them like judgment. Nicholas Castellano did not speak. He simply watched her. His eyes were grey, storm grey, she would later think, and empty of mercy or malice. Just empty. Observing. Is he a good man? Emma whispered. Her first words in hours. Nora did not know how to answer. Instead, she whispered back, he is helping us right now, and that is all that matters. They drove to the edge of Las Vegas, where the city finally surrendered to desert. A mansion appeared, not a house, a mansion, white stone with columns and gates that opened electronically. The kind of place where Nora had never been invited. The kind of place where people like her went only to clean. The vehicle stopped. Nicholas turned to Nora for the first time. When he spoke, his voice came slow and measured, each word placed with intention. You will work as a maid. Room and board. You keep your head down. You do not ask questions. Is this understood? Nora nodded. He did not know she had 72 hours to find $85,000 or lose Emma forever. Did not know that Rachel Dawson, wealthy, beautiful Rachel Dawson, who ran the city's entire shelter system and whose name was on every charity gala invitation, had already arranged for the court to rule against her. Did not know that every door in Las Vegas had been systematically slammed in her face. Did not know that by bringing her into his home, he was bringing the entire weight of his world into collision with the invisible woman he had just saved. He did not know yet. But something in his eyes suggested he was beginning to suspect. The morning light filtered through the mansion's service corridor in thin, grey lines, and Nora's hands had begun to crack. 10 days of industrial cleaner, 10 days of scrubbing marble floors on her knees, 10 days of invisibility, and her palms bled small red crescents that she wrapped in bandages during her 2-minute breaks. The October cold seeped through the old windows like a blade, and she could see her breath in the hallway at 5 in the morning when she arrived to clean Nicholas Castellano's office before he woke. She moved through the space like a ghost, like a shadow that refused to leave, careful not to disturb anything. His desk held documents she didn't understand, shipping routes marked in red, numbers that meant nothing to her. 62 hours remained now. 62 hours until Emma was gone forever. She had saved $127. 127 out of 85,000. The mansion's other staff moved past her in the hallways as if she didn't exist. The cook, the groundskeeper, the accountant, they had eyes only for each other. Nora had become furniture, wallpaper, the kind of woman you looked through rather than at. Emma stayed in the servants' wing with a retired housekeeper named Mrs. Chen, who taught her to read from picture books and braided her dark hair each morning with the tenderness of someone who had raised children of her own. At least Emma was safe. At least in this place, Emma was learning something besides fear. At midnight on the 9th day, Nora carried laundry down the grand staircase, her arms full of white linens that smelled of lavender. The mansion was silent except for the grandfather clock marking the hour. That's when she heard the front door open. Nicholas Castellano entered with the exhaustion of a man who had been making decisions that cost other people everything. His suit was tailored, dark grey wool that probably cost more than her monthly rent used to be, before her rent disappeared entirely. He paused at the wall where a photograph hung in an ornate frame. 2 boys, brothers, maybe 8 and 12 years old. One face had been scratched out with keys, leaving only raw damage and absence. Nora pressed herself against the wall, becoming even smaller than she was. Her black and white maid's uniform blended into the shadows. He didn't see her. People like him never saw people like her. But she saw him. She saw how his hand trembled slightly as he touched the frame. She saw grief in the set of his shoulders, something old and never healed. Vinny appeared from the hallway, his voice low and practiced. The Cordova family accepted your terms. They'll vote with us on the shipping routes. Nicholas nodded without turning from the photograph. My brother would have started a war. Would have burned the whole city to prove he was right. Sometimes mercy is just weakness wearing a different name. He dropped his hand. But sometimes mercy is the only thing that separates us from monsters. He climbed the stairs. Nora stood there holding linens, understanding suddenly that this man, this powerful man with scarred knuckles and storm-gray eyes, knew exactly what it meant to be betrayed by someone you loved. Knew what it meant when the people closest to you became weapons. The next morning at 7, she was carrying laundry again when she saw him through the service corridor window. Douglas Hale. Her breath stopped like a living thing inside her chest. He stood outside the service entrance in a black jacket, his hands curled into fists. Built like a boxer gone to seed, shoulders thick but soft with neglect, neck tattoo visible, a name she'd asked him to cover 1,000 times. He pounded on the door. The sound echoed like violence waiting to happen. I know you're in there, Nora. You can't hide from me. I have friends everywhere. Mrs. Chen was moving toward the lock. Nora's voice came out broken, barely a whisper. Please. Please don't. He'll hurt you. Mrs. Chen looked at the bruises still fading on Nora's throat, the fear in her eyes like something hunted. She turned the lock the other direction and walked away without speaking. Douglas screamed for 5 more minutes, threats, promises, obscenities that turned the air toxic. Then silence. He'd left a note slipped under the door. Nora's hands shook as she opened it. Rachel says hello. 52 hours left. You'll never see that kid again. The word swam in her vision. 52 hours. 2 days and 4 hours. She had $130. She needed $85,000. The mathematics of it was the mathematics of drowning, the numbers getting larger while she got smaller, like a photograph of herself being folded into smaller and smaller pieces until she disappeared. What she didn't know was that Nicholas Castellano had watched the entire scene from his office window on the 3rd floor. Watched her pressed against the wall. Watched her read the note. He made one phone call to his investigator, and within 3 hours had a complete file on the systematic destruction of Nora Voss. Everything. Douglas Hale's arrest record for domestic violence, the restraining orders she'd filed, the police reports that had vanished from the system like they never existed. Rachel Dawson's embezzlement of the shelter funds, $2.3 million over 5 years. The judge who signed custody orders, whose campaign had been funded by Rachel's charity foundation. The blueprint of cruelty that looked exactly like what his brother had done to their family, just wearing a different face. That afternoon, Vinny appeared at her door. The boss wants you in his office. 20 minutes. Nora's heart became a fist inside her ribs. She found him standing at the window, looking out at Las Vegas spreading below like a promise and a lie mixed together. His office smelled of cigar smoke and expensive leather, the kind of space where powerless people came to be judged and found wanting. Sit, he said without turning. She sat on the edge of the chair, back straight, eyes down. Invisible even when directly addressed? Tell me about Douglas Hale. His voice came like the drop before a storm, measured and heavy with intent. Sir, I don't want trouble. I'll leave if... You're not leaving. Answer the question. She took a breath that felt like drowning in air. He was my boyfriend. 2 years ago. When I left, he didn't accept it. He has friends in the police department. Every time I report him, they lose the paperwork. Every time I get a job, someone calls my employer with lies. I had a position at the hospital, they said I stole medications. I didn't. I never would. But Rachel Dawson confirmed the story and I was fired. Nicholas's jaw tightened like a fist. Rachel Dawson. The socialite. She runs the entire shelter network in Las Vegas. She's his partner. She spreads rumors. Uses her reputation to destroy mine. I can't get legitimate work anywhere. No one will rent to me. The shelter where I was living closed and Emma, her voice broke like something that couldn't hold its own weight anymore. Emma's not mine biologically. Her mother died at the shelter 3 years ago and I took care of her. But the court says I need to prove financial stability. I need $85,000 in 48 hours or she goes to foster care. Rachel arranged the whole thing. She wants Emma to disappear because Emma knows what Rachel did. He sat across from her. The silence stretched until it became its own kind of sound. Witness to what? Rachel was embezzling. Emma's mother found the records. The night before she was going to report it, she died. They said it was an overdose, but she never used drugs. Emma was there. She was only 2. Rachel knows someday Emma might remember enough to tell the truth. Nicholas opened his laptop and turned it toward her. On the screen, custody bond requirement. $85,000 exactly. Why 85? He asked. Why not 50? Why not 100? I don't know. That's what the court. It's arbitrary. Designed to be impossible for someone like you. Rachel Dawson has a judge in her pocket. He stood and walked to a wall safe hidden behind a painting. The painting swung open like a door in a wall you didn't know existed. Inside, in metal cases, stacked documents, organized evidence of power. He removed one case and set it on the desk. Inside, stacks of $100 bills. $85,000, and another 20 on top. Nora stood so fast the chair fell backward, clattered against the wood floor. I can't. Why would you help me? I'm nobody. I'm just a maid. I clean your floors. I don't. Because the people who did this believed you were nothing. Believed you were invisible and powerless. That belief needs to be corrected. He closed the case. You protected a child without thinking about the cost. You survived systematic abuse and stayed kind. And you remind me that mercy isn't always weakness. At that moment, Vinny and Enzo stood in the hallway outside his office. Through the slightly open door, Enzo whispered to his partner, "In 15 years I've never seen him like this." Never. Nicholas took her downstairs then, down beneath the mansion to a room that existed in a different world entirely. The underground poker room. Green felt tables, dim lighting from low brass fixtures, cigar smoke curling in the air like ghost fingers. 12 men in dark suits sat or stood at various stations, men who ran his shipping empire, his interests, his network of controlled violence and calculated mercy. He set the metal case on the center table. This woman works in my house. She's under my protection. Anyone who touches her answers to me. Anyone who touches the child answers to me. Pass the word through every street, every business, every connection you maintain. The men nodded. One asked, "What about Douglas Hale?" Nicholas's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'll handle Douglas Hale." 3 blocks away, Douglas Hale sat in a bar on the east side, drinking whiskey that tasted like rust and regret. He showed Nora's photograph to the bartender, a photo from 2 years ago when her smile still had edges that hadn't been worn down by fear. "You seen her?" "I know she's hiding somewhere. That bitch thinks she can run from me." His phone rang. A cop friend from the department, voice tight and careful. "We can't help anymore, Doug. This thing's gotten too complicated. The heat's on us." Douglas's voice dropped into something dangerous. "I don't care about your career. I paid you good money. Yeah, well, consider it a loss. We're done." The line went dead. Douglas called Rachel Dawson instead. She answered on speakerphone while sitting in her penthouse, looking out at the Las Vegas Strip spread below her like a kingdom she owned. White designer suit, blonde hair perfect, surrounding herself with photographs of herself with powerful people, the governor, the mayor, police commissioners, senators. "Douglas, darling, you sound stressed," she said, sipping wine that cost more than Nora made in a month. "The cops are backing off. Someone's protecting her." Rachel laughed, bright and cold as winter. "Nobody protects cleaning ladies, Douglas. You're being paranoid. She's a poor, abused woman with no resources and a ticking clock. In 40 hours, Emma becomes state property and my people make her disappear into a rural facility where nobody asks questions. Nora Voss is already lost." She hung up, swirled her wine, looked at a framed magazine article about her charitable work, Las Vegas Angel, Rachel Dawson's shelter network saves hundreds. Her smile was genuine. She truly believed she was untouchable, that wealth and connections made you invisible to consequences. But in the underground poker room, Nicholas Castellano was making phone calls to the FBI, to his investigator, to people who had been waiting for an excuse to bring Rachel Dawson and Douglas Hale into the light. Mercy, he understood, didn't mean you let monsters walk free. It meant you didn't become a monster yourself while stopping them. The countdown continued. 48 hours left. Nora returned to her room where Emma was sleeping, her small body curled like a question mark. Nora took out the only thing she'd kept from the shelter, Emma's first pair of shoes, tiny red leather boots that her mother had bought 3 years ago. She held them in her hands and, for the first time in months, let herself cry, not from fear this time, but from the terrifying possibility that someone believed her. That mercy was real. That miracles didn't just happen in stories told to children before sleep. The mansion settled into night around her, full of secrets and power and the sound of distant engines turning over in the darkness. The garden was so quiet you could hear the dry October wind scraping dead leaves across stone. Nora sat on a weathered bench as dawn broke over Las Vegas, the metal case containing $85,000 resting at her feet like a bomb that might detonate at any second. Her hands trembled, not from cold, though the temperature had dropped to 43 degrees, but from the weight of what was about to happen. 3 hours until the custody hearing. 180 minutes to determine if Emma would be hers or if the state machinery that Rachel Dawson controlled would swallow the child whole and spit out a broken thing. She held the first pair of shoes Emma had ever owned. Red leather, barely larger than her palm, with tiny silver buckles that still caught the morning light. The laces were frayed. The sole on the left shoe had begun to separate from the heel. Nora had kept these shoes for 14 months, carrying them through every shelter, every car she slept in, every moment when despair felt closer than breath. The shoes represented the only true thing she possessed, not the money, not the mansion, not the promises Nicholas made. Just the fact that Emma had once had a mother who bought her something beautiful, and Nora had loved her enough to hold onto it. The weight of every lost thing crashed down like a ceiling collapsing. Every job she had been fired from when Douglas found her. The waitressing position where the manager watched her bruises spread like watercolor across her arms and hired someone else. The cleaning company that let her go after she missed 3 days in the hospital. The shelter in Henderson that turned her away because Rachel Dawson had already called, spreading the story that Nora was unstable, dangerous, unfit. Every lie. Every door slammed. Every voice that said she was nobody, that people like her didn't deserve mercy, that fighting was pointless. What if the money wasn't enough? What if Rachel had been right, that judges owned by the powerful never ruled in favor of the invisible? What if the federal charges against Douglas and Rachel were paperwork, easily dismissed, leaving the real victory, the custody of Emma, still secured in the hands of the system that had always protected predators? Nora's vision blurred. She couldn't stop her hands from shaking. The shoes fell from her lap into the cold grass. Then a small hand touched her arm. Emma stood there in her pajamas, bare feet on the frost-covered stone, having crept out of the mansion while Mrs. Chen slept. The child said nothing. She simply leaned against Nora's shoulder and sat, the weight of her 5-year-old body the only anchor Nora needed. Not words. Not promises. Just a child who had learned that Nora stayed when other people left. That was all. That was everything. Nora picked up the shoes. Held them tight. Whispered, "We're going to fight." The FBI raid began at 6:02 a.m. at Douglas Hale's apartment complex on Paradise Road. 12 black SUVs surrounded the building like sharks closing on blood in water. Federal agents in tactical gear moved with the precision of choreographed dancers, covering every exit, every window, every path of escape. Special Agent Morrison carried a warrant signed by a federal judge, not the corrupt one Rachel owned, but one from outside the county, one who answered to the law instead of power. They breached the door at 6:49 a.m. Douglas was passed out on his couch, empty vodka bottles arranged on the coffee table like soldiers who had surrendered. His laptop was still open. Still connected. The messages between him and Rachel glowed on the screen in real time, conversations about eliminating Nora, about making Emma disappear into a rural facility where nobody asked questions, about paying off cops and judges. Photographs of Nora taken from hundreds of feet away with telephoto lenses, stalking images spanning 16 months. Every moment documented. Every crime catalogued. Agent Morrison cuffed him herself. "Douglas Hale, you are under arrest for stalking, attempted murder, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and federal witness intimidation." Her voice was calm, professional, like reading a grocery list. Douglas's eyes opened, red-rimmed, confused, still half drunk. "What?" "Wait, I didn't." "Emma Voss witnessed a crime," Morrison continued. "You and Rachel Dawson arranged a murder to cover up embezzlement. We've been building this case for 6 months. Everything you did, every message you sent, every photograph you took, it's all evidence now." Douglas tried to stand. His legs gave out. He collapsed, trembling like a caged animal that suddenly understands the bars aren't coming down. "I'll tell you everything. Rachel planned it. She's the one who, I just loved Nora. This is her fault." Morrison lifted him to his feet by his arm. "Save it for your federal public defender. 40-year minimum sentence. That's the starting point." News cameras were already positioned outside the apartment complex. Nicholas had insured it. Every local station, every network affiliate, every social media account that mattered captured the image of Douglas Hale being pushed into the federal vehicle, his head down, his body shaking with sobs that looked nothing like the confidence of a man who had hunted Nora for 16 months. He looked like what he was, a small thing that believed size and violence made him powerful. At the same moment, Rachel Dawson's penthouse erupted into chaos. FBI agents and a forensic accountant arrived at 7:15 a.m. Rachel answered her own door in a silk robe, coffee cup in hand, her blonde hair still perfect from last night's styling. She smiled that socialite smile, the one that had opened every door in Las Vegas. "Can I help you, agents?" They served the warrant. Embezzlement of $2.3 million from the Las Vegas Shelter Coalition Fund, money meant to help women like Nora, diverted into Rachel's personal accounts, channeled through shell companies, hidden in offshore transfers that the accountant had traced with the precision of someone following a poison through a body. Rachel's cup fell from her hand. Shattered on marble floor. Coffee spread like blood. "This is absurd," she said, voice no longer warm, now sharp as broken glass. "I'm on the board of directors. I'm a philanthropist. My lawyer will." "Your lawyer is already being contacted," Agent Morrison said. Someone else was there, not from the field office, someone with federal seniority. "We have warrants for 3 of your board members as well. This investigation goes deeper than you." They seized her computers. Her phones. Her files. The agents moved through her penthouse like a cleanup crew, cataloging her empire and dismantling it one box at a time. By 9:11 a.m., every news station ran the story: beloved Las Vegas socialite Rachel Dawson arrested for massive charity fraud. The photographs were perfect: Rachel in handcuffs, her hair disheveled, her makeup running, mascara painting black lines down her cheeks like war paint that had finally washed away. She screamed at the cameras, "This is a mistake. Someone set me up. I'm innocent." But the evidence was ironclad. Bank transfers. Falsified receipts. Shell companies with names that matched her children's pet names, companies that existed solely to move stolen money. Forged documents signed by board members who would, within hours, be offering cooperation agreements to federal prosecutors. Rachel had believed herself untouchable. She had been wrong. Nicholas Castellano watched the news from his office at 10:36 a.m., the television broadcasting Rachel's arrest on mute while his investigator sat across from him, summarizing what the FBI had found. Vinny entered without knocking, a privilege only he possessed after 23 years of loyalty. "It's done," Vinny said. "Both of them buried." Nicholas nodded, turning from the screen. His eyes were grey as stone, and Vinny had never seen anything softer in them. The custody hearing. 20 minutes from now, Vinny confirmed. Judge Chen. He's clean. Not in anyone's pocket. And the evidence is, he paused, choosing words carefully. Nicholas, the FBI forensic evidence proves Douglas has been stalking her for 16 months. They have photographs, messages, his own admissions recorded on his phone. Any judge in the country would rule in her favor. Judge Chen will end the custody case before lunch. Nicholas stood. Walked to the window. Las Vegas sprawled below him, all bright light and hidden darkness, the city he had built and now, for the first time, did not want to own alone. "Tell her she won," he said. Nora did not hear the news from Vinny. She heard it from Mrs. Chen, who burst into the mansion's kitchen where Nora was braiding Emma's hair, her hands moving through the child's dark locks with the care of someone handling something sacred. Mrs. Chen was holding her phone, tears streaming down her face. "Nora! Turn on the television. Turn on anything." They arrested him. They arrested both of them. The next 90 minutes passed in the strange timeless space where catastrophe and salvation collapse into the same moment. Nora dressed Emma in the one nice dress the child owned, white with small embroidered flowers, borrowed from Mrs. Chen's granddaughter. She held the red shoes. Did not put them on. That felt like making a wish too early, like tempting fate. The courthouse was sterile and cold, all marble and fluorescent lights that made everyone look like ghosts of themselves. Rachel Dawson was not there. She was being processed, arraigned, her lawyer filing motions that would all be denied. But her shadow covered everything. The judge who had been scheduled to hear the case had recused himself hours earlier, when news of the embezzlement investigation broke. Judge Chen was 72 years old with kind eyes and a wedding ring worn thin from 47 years of marriage. He read the custody petition. Read the background checks. Read the FBI evidence reports that detailed Douglas's stalking, his violence, his complete unsuitability as a guardian. He looked at Nora. "Ms. Voss, you have secured stable employment. You have a residence. You have formal custody support from a documented source." He glanced at Nicholas, who sat in the back of the courtroom in a suit that cost more than most people's cars. "The evidence of endangerment to Emma Voss is overwhelming. The threat has been neutralized by federal law enforcement." The judge turned to Emma. "Emma, do you wish to remain with your mother?" Emma looked at Nora. Looked back at the judge. "Yes," she said. "She doesn't leave." Judge Chen smiled, the smile of someone who had seen enough darkness to recognize light when it appeared. He signed the order in one fluid motion. The pen made a sound like a key turning in a lock. Custody granted. Case closed. "Welcome home, Emma." Nora did not cry. She stood very still, one hand on Emma's shoulder, her other hand holding the red shoes, and she simply stood, not celebrating, not falling apart, just existing in the moment when the fight finally ended. Nicholas waited in the courthouse hallway as they emerged. His men flanked him, but they stepped back when he moved toward Nora. She looked at him, really looked at him, and in that moment saw what he had become by choosing mercy instead of blood. A man who had saved her not because she was useful or beautiful or could give him something he needed, but because she was human, and some humans still remembered that the invisible deserved to be seen. "You're not supposed to be here," Nora said. "Yes, I am," Nicholas replied. He took her hand. Not to claim her. To stand beside her. That was the difference, the thing that changed everything about what he was, what she could become, what miracles looked like when they arrived wearing expensive suits and moved like they owned the world. Because some of us do. And sometimes we choose to use that power for someone else. The metal case sat on the table like a weapon, $85,000 in pristine bills arranged in neat stacks, and Nora's hands trembled as she set it down before the judge. The courtroom smelled like old wood and the particular cold that comes from government buildings where hope goes to die. Judge Patricia Reyes looked down at the case, then at Nora, then at Emma sitting beside her mother with her small hand gripping the armrest like it might disappear if she let go. In the back row, Nicholas Castellano wore a suit that cost more than most people earned in a year. His presence made the court officers shift in their seats. This was not a man who belonged in government buildings. This was a man who bent the world to his will, and yet he sat perfectly still, one hand resting on his thigh, watching Nora with the intensity of someone watching their own survival reflected back at them. The prosecutor, a thin man with desperate eyes, still working for Rachel Dawson's tattered network, stood to object. Your Honor, while the bond amount has been satisfied, we have serious concerns about the source of these funds. Ms. Voss cannot adequately explain. Judge Reyes cut him off with a look that could have drawn blood. I have reviewed the documentation. Private loan from Castellano Holdings, a legitimate business entity. The bond requirement is satisfied. What I have also reviewed this morning are the FBI reports filed at 6 a.m. indicating that Rachel Dawson, former director of the city's foster care system, orchestrated the allegations against Ms. Voss as part of a criminal conspiracy to maintain control over vulnerable children for exploitation purposes. The prosecutor's face drained of color. The evidence of endangerment to Emma Voss is overwhelming, Judge Reyes continued, her voice steady and final like a gavel already falling. The threat has been neutralized by federal law enforcement. She turned to Emma. The child sat very still, her eyes wide, not understanding the words but understanding the weight of them. Emma, do you wish to remain with your mother? Emma looked at Nora. Really looked at her. Then she looked back at the judge and said, with the clarity only children possess, yes. She doesn't leave. Judge Reyes smiled, the smile of someone who had seen enough darkness to recognize light when it appeared. She signed the order in one fluid motion. The pen made a sound like a key turning in a lock. Custody granted. Effective immediately. Case closed. Welcome home, Emma. Nora did not cry. Her tears had been exhausted somewhere on a highway outside the city 3 years ago. She stood very still, one hand on Emma's shoulder, her other hand holding the red shoes, the first pair Emma had ever owned, back when she was 3 and terrified and new. Nora had kept them through every crisis, every moment of doubt, every night she thought the world would take her child. She held those shoes now like they were proof that hope had substance, that invisible things could be held in your hands and carried into tomorrow. Nicholas waited in the courthouse hallway as they emerged. His men flanked him, Vinny and Enzo and others whose names Nora had learned but whose history she would never fully know, but they stepped back when he moved toward her. He moved slowly, deliberately, the way a dangerous thing moves when it chooses not to be dangerous. Nora looked at him, really looked at him, and saw what he had become by choosing mercy instead of blood. A man taller than the world around him, broad-shouldered, with dark eyes that had seen the worst humanity could do and chosen something else anyway. He wore a charcoal suit, open white shirt revealing the edge of a tattoo on his chest, and a gold watch that caught the fluorescent courtroom light like a star in a dark place. "You're not supposed to be here," Nora said. Her voice was barely a whisper, trembling like a candle in wind. "Yes, I am," Nicholas replied. He took her hand. Not to claim her. Not to demonstrate possession. To stand beside her. That was the difference, the thing that changed everything about what he was, what she could become, what mercy looked like when it arrived wearing expensive suits and moved like it owned the world. Because some of us do. And sometimes we choose to use that power for someone else. Emma tugged at Nora's sleeve. "Is he the car man?" Nicholas looked down at the child with an expression Vinny and Enzo had never seen before. Not softness exactly. Something more honest than that. Recognition. I am, he said. Emma considered this with the seriousness of a 4-year-old contemplating the nature of the universe. You're very tall. Yes. Are you nice? The question hung in the fluorescent air. Nicholas glanced at Nora, then back to Emma. I am nice to people I love, he said, and Enzo's eyes widened because in 15 years he had never heard Nicholas Castellano use that word. Emma accepted this answer as complete and turned back to her mother. The world resumed its ordinary motion. Outside, the October sun hit the concrete steps with the angle of late afternoon, that particular slant of light that made everything look temporary and precious. Nora stood with Emma on her hip, the red shoes in her free hand, and felt the weight of 3 years lift like it had never been real at all. It had been real. Every sleepless night, every moment of terror, every time she thought the system would take her daughter. Real as a blade through her chest. But it was over now. The position I mentioned, Nicholas said as they descended the courthouse steps. His voice was deep and solid like an oath. The one in legitimate operations. It's still yours if you want it. We identify properties, help people rebuild, stop systems from being weaponized against them. You be good at it. You've lived in that system. You know where the rot lives. Nora stopped. She didn't speak. Or, Nicholas continued, you take the year to just exist. The custody is final. Emma is safe. You have time now. Nora thought about the black and white maid uniform. About being invisible, about keeping her head down, about surviving by taking up as little space as possible in the world. She thought about the $85,000 sitting in that courtroom, about how Nicholas had provided it without being asked, without demanding anything in return except her continued existence. Then she thought about Emma. About the next time an invisible child needed someone to see them. About having power to help instead of hide. I'll take the job, she said. Nicholas nodded once, like she had given him the answer he needed to be able to breathe again. Start Monday. Vinny will send you the details. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a small envelope. This is for Emma's school. Whatever she needs. Books, uniforms, music lessons if she wants them. Nora opened her mouth to object. It's not negotiable, Nicholas said, and she heard in his voice the weight of an empire, the sound of someone accustomed to having the world conform to his will. But then he smiled, a small thing, barely visible, but it transformed his face into something almost human. Consider it from her father figure. Every child needs someone who invests in their future. As they drove away in separate cars, Emma asked from the back seat, is he a good man? Nora thought about the poker room. The armed guards. The empire built on shadows and violence and money that changed hands in the dark. She thought about Rachel Dawson's face when she realized her corruption had been documented, that her network was dissolving, that the invisible victims she had preyed upon had finally been given a voice. She also thought about the $85,000 with no strings attached. The FBI investigation that appeared like divine intervention. The judge who replaced Rachel's appointee. The choice to show mercy when Nicholas could have remained uninvolved, could have watched her disappear into the system like so many others. He's a complicated man, Nora said finally. But he's good to us. That's enough. What she didn't know was that Nicholas had already set up a trust fund for Emma's education, had paid off every debt Nora had incurred trying to survive, had instructed Vinny and Enzo to maintain permanent protective detail at distance, watching, waiting, ensuring that Douglas Hale or any other predator never approached them again. Because mercy isn't weakness. It's insurance that the monsters never come back. 6 months later, the October light was soft and forgiving. Nora worked in an office on the 3rd floor of a legitimate real estate development company bearing Nicholas's name. She wore business clothes now, a navy dress, low heels, her hair pulled back with a gold clip, not a uniform. The black and white maid outfit hung in a closet, saved but unused, a monument to what she had survived. Emma was in 1st grade, thriving, laughing, building friendships with children whose parents had never been incarcerated, who had never eaten from garbage cans, who had never known the particular terror of foster care. She still held Nora's hand crossing the street. She still slept with a nightlight. But she slept. She was no longer listening for footsteps in the hallway. They lived in a small house Nicholas owned. Nora paid rent from her salary, real money, earned, hers, and that distinction mattered more than any charity could have. To work for something. To own your own survival. To not be invisible. Douglas Hale was in federal prison in Arizona, 40 years, serving time for kidnapping, attempted murder, and violations of a dozen protective orders. Nora thought about him sometimes late at night, but it was a distant thought, like remembering a nightmare after waking. It had happened to someone else. Rachel Dawson was in a women's correctional facility, her penthouse seized and sold to pay restitution, her name stripped from every building it once graced. The city was forgetting her, and forgetting is a kind of death for people who built their identity on public recognition. The city had moved on. But sometimes, on dry October nights when the cold bit like a blade wrapped in ice, Nora stood in her backyard and remembered. The highway. The broken-down car. The moment when she thought the sky would never clear again. And the convoy of black SUVs that found her like she was being called back to life. Nicholas visited once a month, always professional, always with Vinny and Enzo maintaining their distance. He brought Emma gifts, books about architecture, a telescope to see the stars, shoes to replace the ones she'd outgrown. They were simple gifts. What mattered was that he kept showing up. One evening in late October, he brought Emma new red sneakers. Bright, pristine, the color of possibility. Emma squealed and ran to show her friends, and for a moment Nora saw her as she might have been without the darkness, just a child, ordinary, safe. When Emma was asleep, Nora and Nicholas sat on the back porch. The cold pulled around them like a blanket. "You remembered," Nora said. "The red shoes." "You kept her first pair," Nicholas replied. Seemed right to celebrate this beginning. They sat in comfortable silence. Finally, Nora asked, "Do you ever hear from your brother?" "No." "Maybe someday." Maybe mercy means leaving the door unlocked even when you don't expect anyone to walk through. He looked at her. "You taught me that." She smiled. "You taught me that strength isn't about surviving alone. It's about knowing when to let someone help carry the weight." Nicholas nodded slowly. "Maybe we both learned something." As he left, Vinny muttered to Enzo, "He's different now." Enzo grinned. "Not different. More complete." The light in the small house shone warm against the October night. Nora and Emma inside, finally safe. Nicholas driving back to his empire, finally at peace. Two people rescued by each other. Two lives rebuilt from wreckage. Sometimes miracles come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes mercy looks like justice. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is give someone a choice when the world has taken all their options away. If this story moved you, drop a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more stories about unexpected heroes, impossible choices, and the grace we find in our darkest moments. Comment below, have you ever been saved by someone you never expected? We read every response. Remember, mercy isn't weakness. It's the courage to choose something better. After the rain, the sky clears. And sometimes miracles come from the most unexpected places. We wish you good health, a joyful life, and days filled with peace and happiness. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. Goodbye, and we will see you again in the next video.